Hi, everyone. Welcome to another episode of Weekly Reads, where we give you 5 book recommendations all in one show. My name is Devon. I work at the Worcester Public Library, and I'm here today with my co-host, Joy. Hi, Joy.
Hi, Devin. How are you today?
I'm doing great. I really like your autumnal turtleneck. That's very
Well,
nice.
I think I look very businesslike today,
I
so
agree.
very unusual, but
Okay, well, almost everything we're talking about today you can get online with the Libby or Overdrive app. You can also use Overdrive in your browser, on your laptop or desktop for ebooks. And don't forget, we're doing physical pickup of items now in the lobby, so you can call ahead or order online. So now I'm going to switch screens so you can see what we have in store for you this week. All right, as usual, I'm going to do the fiction, Joy will do the nonfiction, and we have our coming soon title. So for my first book, I chose this one by Alyssa Cole. I don't know if you remember, but I reviewed one of her romance books earlier this year, and this is her first thriller. It seems like she's doing very well with this. It just came out this September. The book is being called a gripping, but not your usual thriller that's a cross between Alfred Hitchcock's Rear Window and Jordan Peele's Get Out. In the book, Sydney is Brooklyn born and raised, but her beloved neighborhood is changing. Condos are sprouting like weeds. For sale signs are appearing overnight, and neighbors she's known her whole life are disappearing. Sydney channels her frustration into making a walking tour and finds an unlikely and unwanted assistant in her neighbor Theo, one of the new arrivals to the block. But Sydney and Theo's dive into neighborhood history becomes a dizzying descent into paranoia and fear. Their neighbors may not have moved to the suburbs, and the push to revitalize the community may be deadly. This book is said to have 2 unreliable narrators, and just a heads up, the plot contains historical facts and racism. This book got starred reviews from Booklist and Publishers Weekly. Author Alifair Burke said, "From the first page, I felt like I was right there in the gentrifying Brooklyn neighborhood, filled with sharply etched characters and dialogue that zings. And then bam, I was knocked over by the momentum of an intense psychological thriller that doesn't let go until the final page." So this book sounds like it's great. I think it's interesting that it's a cross between a thriller and social commentary. When I read one of Alyssa's romance novels earlier this year, I thought the character development was great, and her writing style is also very good. That's a picture of her there on the right. So this book is very popular. If you're interested like I am, you have to get on the waiting list. And here's one from Joy.
my first choice for this week is Weapons of Math, and that's math, not mass, destruction, how big data increases inequality and threatens democracy by mathematician and data scientist Kathy O'Neill. This book was included on many best of the year lists when it was first published in 2016, and it certainly remains relevant today. I might add that this book was recommended by my friend and colleague Devin, and I was extremely reluctant to read it because of the M word, math, but I did, and I'm glad that I did. But I digress. Let me start with a story. Almost 100 years ago, a young man named Herbert ran into a local banker on the streets of his Midwestern hometown. Long story short, the banker had a proposal. Herb, he said, I'd like to lend you some money to start that business you've been talking about. I'll admit that when I first heard that story many years later, I was a bit skeptical. Really? Could it have been that easy? In a word, yes. See, the banker knew Herbert. They were both children of Swedish immigrants. Herb had a reputation for paying his bills on time. He was a stalwart member of the Lutheran Church. He neither smoked nor drank. He could tell a good joke, and everybody liked him. The banker sized him up as a good man and a good risk. Herb got his loan. But what if that young man had been Black or Catholic or unlikable, or maybe enjoyed a drink or two of an evening? Would he have been handed a loan? Maybe, but maybe not. This is exactly the kind of inequity that algorithms designed to sort through the mountains of data produced by machine are intended to prevent. Take gender or race or messy human subjectivity out of the equation, and we end up with a level playing field, right? In Weapons of Math Destruction, author Kathy O'Neill says, not so fast. She reminds us that algorithms are built by fallible human beings who all too frequently embed biases and unexamined assumptions into even the most sophisticated computer model. One small example, take race out of the equation, but retain zip code. And too often we are left with a fairly reliable substitute. And in the data field, those are often called proxies for race, or at least socioeconomic status. That might be forgivable if our algorithms were transparent, subject to review, or open to correction, but too often they are not. Increasingly, the decisions that profoundly affect our lives are not made by humans, but by machines, employing formulae we can neither readily access nor easily understand. Worse, because these decisions are determined not by flawed human beings, but by what we regard as hard, objective mathematical models, we assume that they are invariably right. And when they are not, and often they are not, the consequences can be dire, particularly for the poor, who might find themselves targeted by unscrupulous lenders, denied mortgages, exploited by for-profit colleges, and even tagged sight unseen as potential criminal offenders. Big data, O'Neill says, is now an integral part of our lives. Herb's banker is gone for good. All more reason, she says, to demand accountability, transparency, and fairness in all of our endeavors.
I know this is a really specific aspect, but this kind of makes me think of that book Evicted that you talked about earlier this year.
Sometimes the poor can't win for losing. I mean, there's just no way around that.
Yeah. Okay, well, here's my next fiction choice. If you didn't know, November is Native American Heritage Month. So I thought about featuring some Native American writers, and today I wanted to talk about this book by Rebecca Roanhorse. That's her on the right. This book came out in 2018, and it's book 1 in the 6th World series. Right now, there are 2 books in that series. This book is a fast and entertaining adventure that was one of Time Magazine's 100 best fantasy books of all time. It was winner of the Locus Award for Best First Novel and a Best Book of the Year according to Library Journal, Tor, and Barnes & Noble. While most of North America has drowned beneath the rising waters of a climate apocalypse, Dinata, formerly the Navajo Reservation, has been reborn and ancient gods roam. Maggie is a violent freelance monster hunter and a supernaturally gifted killer. When a small town needs help finding a missing girl, Maggie is their best hope. But what Maggie discovers about the monster is more terrifying than anything she could imagine. She enlists the aid of Kai, an unconventional medicine man. Together they unravel clues from legends, trade favors with tricksters, and battled dark witchcraft in the world of deteriorating technology. As Maggie discovers the truth behind the killings, she will have to confront her past to survive. This book has a cinematic ending and got starred reviews from Library Journal and Publishers Weekly. It also has a richly detailed world that even includes dive bars. New York Times said, "Someone please cancel the TV show Supernatural and give us at least 5 seasons of this badass indigenous monster hunter and her silver-tongued sidekick." I just thought that was a great quote. The book sounds great. I like that, one character is silver-tongued and one character is sort of the fighter. I like the aspect of the old gods roaming the earth again. So if you're interested in this book, I think there's also a waiting list for this one because it is popular. So I will see you on the waiting list. Here's one from Joy.
Devon, in light of Native American History Month, I really loved the book you recommended earlier, The Only Good Indian. Excellent horror. So, fellow readers, if you haven't read it, I would suggest it.
I have heard it's spooky. I'm glad you enjoyed it.
Ooh. Well, my next choice for this week is 6 Days in August, The Story of Stockholm Syndrome by David King. Many of us undoubtedly know that the phrase Stockholm Syndrome is used to describe an inexplicable bond that may develop between captive and captor in a hostage situation. Most of us, however, are probably not aware of the origin of the term or the story behind it, and that is too bad because that story is a nail biter. On a lovely day in August in 1973, a young man wearing a wig and brandishing a machine gun entered the lobby of a bank in central Stockholm and, accompanied by a spray of bullets, thank God aimed at the ceiling, shouted in impeccable English, "Now this party starts." The man, who would eventually be identified as habitual criminal Jana Olsen, demanded cash, which he promptly received. And most of those who had been in the bank at the time fled or were allowed to leave. Now would have been the time for Olsen to get the hell out of Dodge, loot in hand. Instead, he took 4 hostages, 3 women and 1 man, retreated with them into the vault, and demanded that the man known as the Swedish Che Guevara, a handsome, charismatic, professional bank robber named Clark Olofsson, be released from prison and transported to the bank to join him. Authorities decided to take that gamble, hoping that Olofsson would persuade him, that's Olsen, to surrender peacefully. It quickly became clear, however, that although Olofsson's motivation will never be fully understood, his primary allegiance was to his fellow outlaw, not to those in law enforcement. This is just the first in a series of twists and turns involving mistaken identity, alleged police incompetence, political intrigue, media obsession, poisoned beer, and a mesmerized public, all adding up to a story that is stranger than fiction. And the strangest element of all is the evolving bond that developed between the hostages and their captors over the course of an agonizing 6-day ordeal. Is it any wonder that the victims began to identify with those who shared their misery, treated them with unfailing kindness, and most of all, ironically, did not kill them when they could have done so? Especially since on the other side of the wall, throngs of police, attired in riot gear, awaited the signal to storm the vault and perhaps kill them in the course of an attempted rescue? Well, eventually SWAT teams did invade the vault, and Hostages and hostage takers alike emerged unscathed. Olson and Olafson were packed off to jail. Happy ending? Well, I guess. But over the course of the next few days, the rescued victims were vociferous in the defense of their attacker and bitterly resentful of those who had, after all, risked their lives to save them. Thanks for nothing, cops, their attitude seemed to imply. Most of the former hostages maintained at least intermittent contact with Olson and Olafson over many years. Puzzled? Look up the term Stockholm Syndrome.
I have to say, for some reason, I thought Stockholm Syndrome was more, caused by a long-term situation. I didn't realize it all started from a 6-day situation.
Yeah, that happened pretty quickly.
Yeah.
Now, want me to tell you a little bit about this picture here?
Yeah, please do.
Okay, at some point over that 6-day time period, the police drilled a hole in the ceiling of the vault and were able to actually lower a camera long enough and far enough to be able to take this photograph of the hostages huddled in abject fear in their place of imprisonment. And over on this side, you have, that's Janne Olson being escorted out of the vault when he was finally captured. So all in all, a pretty intriguing story.
Sounds it.
And
all right, well, it's time for our coming soon title, but before I switch slides, just a reminder to give us some likes and loves if you enjoy our videos, and also share these with your friends who want book recommendations. And here's our coming soon title.
It's me again. My choice for coming soon is the book, A Wealth of Pigeons, a cartoon collection by Harry Bliss and Steve Martin, comedian Steve Martin, which will be released on November 17th and will be available in print and hopefully on Overdrive and Libby. So this is what multi-talented comedian Steve Martin says in his introduction to A Wealth of Pigeons, a cartoon collection. I've always looked upon cartooning as comedy's last frontier. I have done stand-up, sketches, movies, monologues, awards show introductions, sound bites, blurbs, talk show appearances, and tweets. But the idea of a one-panel image with or without a caption mystified me. I felt like, yeah, sometimes I'm funny, but then there are these other weird freaks who are actually funny. And you can understand that I was deeply suspicious of these people who were actually funny. In order to venture into this lauded territory of cartooning, Martin partnered with heralded New Yorker cartoonist Harry Bliss. Steve shared the caption and cartoon ideas. Harry provided impeccable artwork, and together they created this collection of humorous cartoons and comic strips with amusing commentary about their collaboration throughout. The result? A gorgeous, funny, singular book, perfect to give as a gift. It is, after all, November, or to buy for yourself. And Devon, I might add that there are other funny titles by male comedians that have either come out or will come out shortly. There's one by David Sedaris and one by Jerry Seinfeld. So I may review either one or both of those at some future date.
Yeah, that's a good point. There are a lot of books by funny people coming out right now, and that's probably a good thing. And that brings us to the end of our episode for this week. Don't forget that if you're looking for a book recommendation or you want to read alike for your favorite author, you can put that in the comments below and Joy and I will get back to you. Otherwise, thanks for watching.
See you later, fellow readers.